In today's episode, we're talking about what's really going on between Facebook and Australia.
Then we're talking about what the future holds for trading platforms like Public.com and Robinhood. Stay tuned.
It is Friday, February 19th. This is the Piper Rundown. We analyze business and culture to help you win. Today's rundown is presented by JetStore. JetStore has been providing affordable, reliable, and easy to manage data storage and cloud solutions to over 4,000 customers worldwide for over 26 years. JetStore offers storage systems for private cloud hosting, video surveillance, Internet of Things, AI, machine learning, edge computing, data archiving, HPC, media production, medical imaging, and flight simulations. What a fun mix of offerings. For more details, visit jetstore.com. Thank you for sponsoring the Rundown.
We host the Rundown because we like trying to make sense of different business stories. We like hopefully discussing it in an approachable way. And we also like dispelling, I don't want to say misinformation, that makes it sound way more pernicious, but bad analysis, bad summaries of what's going on. And that's what we're hoping to do today in a clear-eyed manner. The first topic is Facebook shutting off links to Australian news websites on their platform as a result of the threats by the Australian government, and as a proxy, the Australian government speaking on behalf of Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, to force large digital platforms, and when I say large, I'm just referencing the duopoly, Google and Facebook, that make up the vast majority of all digital advertising revenues, forcing those platforms to pay a fee on a per link basis for traffic that is sent to Australian news sites on the Australian internet. In addition to that, the media bargaining law would require that arbitrators determine the rates that are paid for those links. So this is similar to a baseball-style arbitration where instead of two parties negotiating and finding a median point, there is a third party that sets where that price target would be. And in an ideal scenario where there is no such thing as corrupt human beings or, underhanded, secretive political machinations.
What's that like?
It could be a way to make something free and fair. However, because you've got two ruthless operators on either side of the table here, in Mark Zuckerberg and his Facebook entity, and Rupert Murdoch and News Corp, this is a story with no good guys.
Yep, 100%.
It's just going to be a proxy for some very vicious negotiations. And this all came to a head this week when Facebook made this choice to shut off traffic via these links. This has been something that's kind of been an undercurrent, a minor story for months, because it's been contemplated, it's been discussed in Australian Parliament. It has been misunderstood by many as just a pay-to-play mechanism, a pay-for news in different markets mechanism, which is something that Google pays for in other arenas. And Google has made a deal with News Corp so as to not have to abide by this law and just be able to work that deal out one-to-one. But Facebook has basically said, nope, we're not playing this game. This is not only potentially immensely damaging to their margins, their profitability, their business model, but it's also something where we hold all the leverage. Facebook looks at this law, which says, hey, the government is going to force these specific two companies to pay these types of companies for these links, as misunderstanding the balance of power in these arrangements and who actually has the leverage. Facebook has a news feed. One of the things that populates that feed is Australian news site content. But that is the distinct minority of the totality of the consumption experience for someone that chooses to log into their Facebook account and scroll through the feed. What many people are there to consume is content from their favorite brands, content from their friends, family, other associated acquaintances, the happenings of their life. And while they're consuming that, Facebook delivers ad products in the midst of that news feed. That's how they make their money, and that's why companies like the websites, the news companies that are in Rupert Murdoch's enormous media conglomerate, are struggling because the duopoly has sucked some of the oxygen out of the room by being such a tremendously effective aggregator of attention and distributor of that attention to their ads and to the platforms that value from being on them. The reality is that the News Corp is hurt way more significantly by having all that traffic get choked off and the ads that they display on their website seeing significantly less eyeballs and therefore less revenue from their advertisers who pay for that distribution. But just kind of a gross, it's one of the grosser stories of the ones that we've, not as gross as, we talk about the genocidal camps happening in Xinjiang for the Uyghurs, a tier below that for grossness, but still pretty darn gross.
I totally agree. It is absolutely mind-blowing to me that, and I think a lot of people forget just how powerful the big tech companies are. Even though, you always know it, it's always in the back of your head, but to blacklist an entire country is wild, and there's literally no controlling them at all.
I mean, a law could still be put in place, but so I think we're in this climate of antitrust scrutiny, and to me, Google cutting a deal is them trying to stay out of the limelight with that. So News Corp has a ton of companies. They have Wall Street Journal, Fox News, HarperCollins. That's where a Western, American, North American centric audience will be like, oh, I recognize all those. But Murdoch is an Aussie. He started there. He owns almost all of the news entities, and that's not perfect. There's obviously other ones, but he has an enormous amount of influence there, and his capacity to turn all of his mouthpieces directly at an enemy and change sentiment is substantial. So that's the trade-off that they're making here, and it's a very easy, we've talked about this before. Facebook is the easiest to paint with that negative brush. They're very exposed in that way, but there is also just the fundamental reality of their business model, and if they don't want to play in the news game, they can still be a wildly profitable, successful business and basically simply just kneecap those other entities. And candidly, if that just the way a market dynamic can play out here is, hey, if these are the companies that are going to extort us for money via their proxies in government, that just opens the door for some media entity not based in Australia to gin up more media news coverage, read the stories that are happening on those Australian sites, more or less copy them. That already happens in the media game. Copy that story, publish it to their end, and that becomes the source of shareable content. Mm-hmm. So they really get to play market maker here. And I think that naked display of power will definitely draw antitrust-minded legislators and executives in government to act, but at the same time, the move that they're making is very pragmatic.
Yes, totally. What a weird world.
Yes. I think it's very interesting. I mean, I think Google is way more at risk, and Facebook is just not as strong of an antitrust case, but when you wield power in this way, it definitely brings a target on your back.
For sure. Facebook, but see, you say it brings a target on their back, and really they've been under antitrust scrutiny countless times in the last however many years, and they just keep growing. There's literally no slowing them down.
Yeah.
Even something like this, I don't see it hindering Facebook at all.
I think it's one of those things that it doesn't until it does. And that's a tipping point for sentiment.
We'll see. Maybe in 2022.
Perhaps. Speaking of sentiment, there is an enormous amount of froth, excitement about enabling retail trading of securities, options, and the like. And the recent GameStop frenzy was very much epitomized by Robinhood traders, but when Robinhood shut off trading, people were looking for alternatives. That puts the antenna up for other venture investors who have looked at public.com, which just raised $220 million at a $1.2 billion valuation. Public.com boasts 1 million members despite only being in business publicly for 18 months. And my basic takeaway is, and we're going to talk more about Robinhood here in a sec, my basic takeaway is that this GameStop moment was similar to the like cancel Uber, Travis Kalanick departs, major overhaul, sexual assault allegations, all that stuff that was just like a black eye on Uber that permanently altered the market. Not that this was ever one that was going to be a winner take all, but while Robinhood is getting tons of free press, they will never be like the sole entity of this, because there will people just be like, never them.
Yeah.
Never, ever them, ever again.
Absolutely. Robinhood's blacklisted by a couple of big names. I know El Perez, Dave Portnoy, has spoken out very publicly and condemning their actions. But we'll see. They did kind of miss the mark. They missed their moment. They could have handled the entire GameStop scandal in a much different way that would have maybe garnered more trust amongst their users. And instead, people are flooding to public.
Yeah. But there's so many pre-established ones, like Schwab is down to no fee trading, E-Trade, all these others. It's really hard for me to understand, other than just having a novel approach to marketing that's maybe more younger generation centric is going to take a long time to pay off because those people don't have any money.
Right.
So who knows? Who knows? Speaking of not knowing anything, I don't know how anyone could have watched the entirety of the testimonies yesterday regarding the GameStop saga involving Ken Griffin from Citadel, Gabe from Melvin Capital, Vlad from Robinhood, Steve, the Reddit CEO, and our hero Keith Gill, otherwise known as Roaring Kitty. To start things off, if you think Keith Gill is the bad guy here, I've seen different categorizations of he led hordes of unsuspecting investors into this trade, some of which experienced ruin. If you think Keith Gill is the bad guy here, you are a moron.
Wow, very definitive.
You're a moron. Ken Griffin, Citadel, one of the largest hedge funds on the planet. Melvin Capital, as we mentioned, $12 billion in assets under management, grossly overexposed, terrible risk management, blew up, lost more than half the value of their fund in the GameStop trade. Vlad, who completely failed to issue any sort of transparency and is in bed with some of these other powerful players that were on the wrong side of the trade, hyper exposed, and really failed to communicate clearly. I don't think Reddit did anything wrong here. They're just building communities. There's nothing gross there. I think that they were just kind of explaining the role that a subreddit plays in something like this. But yeah, Keith Gill, epic. Let people know that he wasn't a cat. Let people know that he still likes the stock. Let people know that this is just a normal dude using the modern tools of media production and brain power to come up with a trade idea. I'm of the opinion, though, that for as much bad press as this cycle is for Robinhood, they're like one of the 50 most popular apps on the iOS store. Yeah. Most people are just like, oh, Robinhood does this thing. They're the free trading platform. I'm not going to spend the time to go find out what Public is, find out what these other ones are, and find the alternative. Most people are just like, oh, Robinhood does that, so I guess I'll go with them.
Yeah. People don't really like to put in effort into research.
Yeah. But a question that was not asked, that should have been asked, if traders were not trading on margin, if they had cash in their account, why couldn't they buy stock in GameStop? That's the question that was not being asked, that should have been asked, because all these opaque, obscure explanations as to why they had to shut off the buying of these equities is all predicated on these margin calls that were being made by these larger exchanges, these larger, more powerful entities than Robinhood. Margin is not a concern, though, if there's cash in an account.
Right.
If someone's not trading on margin, you just take the cash from their account
Right.
and you move it over to the person that needs the cash for the trade. Settlement should be easy. And that's how every account works. Every trading account works. You put cash in and you can trade with it. Now, trading on margin is a completely different thing because you don't necessarily have that cash at that moment in time. But there were people with cash in their accounts that could not trade. Robinhood said, you cannot buy. And that allowed very, very large, powerful entities to escape with fewer losses than they otherwise would have.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
And another thing, it would be lovely if Ken Griffin answered the question, do people that have their trades routed through Citadel, which is something that Citadel pays for, they pay for the order flow associated with Robinhood orders, do they get front run? Do they get access to less than optimal pricing, less than optimal bids when they make that trade because of being routed through you? Completely evaded that question. That would have been lovely to get a straight answer to as well. But alas, it's over. A lot of time wasted, a lot of grandstanding, a lot of BS where the mouths move and nothing of meaning comes out. And that's why people are cynical.
Man, what a lovely note to wrap up on.
Happy Friday. Did I make that?
I think you did.
Kobe.
R.I.P.
Any plans for the weekend? Any exciting experiences?
Experiences planned? No,
paint some
it's
shit?
gonna paint some shit.
Gonna
What
post
else is
some
new?
TikToks?
Definitely. What about you? Any plans for the weekend?
I'm gonna try to get outside. Not that this will be resolved by going outside, but I feel like I'm at like the peak of my pasty, unmelanined. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I just need some fresh air. I need some time outside. Be very cold, but whatever.
It's Pittsburgh for you. Well, that's the rundown.
Yep.